Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
So welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are all well. If you're watching this, it's Sunday at noon. I'm delighted to see you. It's great because with Scotland kicking off at 2 a.m, we weren't sure if anyone would turn up today. But we don't, of course, we recorded this before the game so we can get ready for the game. So we don't know the score. You do watching this. So I hope we're all happy. I hope we're all in great mood. And, well, come on, the boys, get stuck in. Anyway, but there's plenty to talk about this week. And we've got the full gang here today. And we're also joined by Mark Mayer from up there in the northeast. Mark, welcome to Through a Scottish Prism.
Thank you, Roddy. Been a follower of the show for a long time. Great to finally be on it.
That's it. Your check cleared, and that was it. We were straight on it.
Check. I thought it was a coffee machine we gave you.
No, it was the Mont Blanc pen. The Mont Blanc pen. Oh, we are naughty. By the way, anyone watching, we're only kidding, okay? We don't want big PC plod knocking on the door. Anyway, one of the things that came out this week, we shouldn't get surprised anymore, Phil, about what happens, but this headline hit. The Scottish wind farms have got to pay £1 billion to use the United Kingdom grid, the figures reveal. Whereas any of these wind farms down south are getting paid. They are getting paid to attach to the grid, but we're not a colony.
No, so they say. Yeah, but the UK energy markup is or the makeup of the UK energy system is made entirely for the benefit of the southeast of England. We've had the talks about nuclear before. We know that 96.5% of the oil's in Scottish waters. We know that we've got 2/3 of the sea area. We know we've got approaching 70% of the gas. It's all in Scottish waters, and almost all finds and all future finds will be in Scottish waters, particularly off the west coast as we head round past west of Shetland, where I've done some major oil and gas projects. But what's also happened is this political aspect that's been introduced about green energy and the tree hugging malarkey that's going on. And so low carbon energy sources are all the rage. Over 60% of the UK's energy or electricity comes from what they call clean sources. Nothing's purely clean, with wind and power contributing about 28%. Now, typically, Scotland, if we were to do it ourselves, we would sell almost all our oil and gas, and all our energy would come from pumped storage, from wave, from tidal, and not the intermittent solar and wind energy that we're typically seeing here. We're far. We've got way too many wind farms. Ask anybody in Scotland. You're not far from a wind farm, no matter where you're in Scotland, and it's all to tie into the grid. But this charge is part of the game that is played. So energy producers, private companies to invest, are asked to charge for every gigawatt. It costs you actually get a discount if you generate a gigawatt near London. If you do it in the north of Scotland, you've got to pay more to get access to the grid. It's a complete con, and it's just simply because of the distribution charges or costs to network it. But we've got a national grid, but it really just is designed for the UK, for the southeast of England. So it was ever thus. We've been absolutely raped and pillaged in terms of our energy. Scotland should be selling all its oil, all its gas, and using very little of it. We would be completely self-sufficient, would be very wealthy, and would have a national oil fund, so a sovereign fund, just like Norway, where we could go independent. But that's the main reason why we're not independent, because it would bankrupt Britain. Because the richest part of Scotland, the richest part of the UK would disappear instantly, and that cash cow wanders over the hill. It reminds me of that McGonagall poem. The chicken is a noble beast, the cow is more forlorner. It stands about in a field all day with 1 league in each corner, and then it buggers off, man. Simple as that. They can't handle us. They cannot afford to lose Scotland, and that's why we will be forever in change until we break them. That's a fact.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first thing we'll do after we break them, ladies and gentlemen, is put a big electric meter, a big lecky meeting on the south side of the Tweed, and they'll have to put in lots of English 50 pences we'll take off them for the electricity. They're stealing for nothing just now. But this whole thing, Eva, we are sick on here every day. We tell people every podcast, we need our independence, and here's why. Here's another reason. This is nothing but, dare I say, Scorch earth policy. It's about making us an industrial wasteland. It is treating us as a colony.
It's just more evidence of the cost of the union, and the cost is just far too high and always has been. Particularly when you start looking at the detail of this, because as Phil quite rightly said, Scotland will be paying of the order of £1 billion to join the grid, and those elsewhere in the UK are being paid so to do. That is not sustainable, it's not tenable, it's not justified under any circumstances. But we talk about the cost of living for our citizens. We speak about people living unnecessarily in poverty, and we remind ourselves, as Phil again just did, that the Norwegian oil fund is worth of the order of $2 trillion. And we could have had that here for Scotland. We still can have that type of fund, but not when we're part of in inverted commas, union, whether you consider that we're colonised or otherwise. But, they didn't colonise us so that we could join a union and prosper. The forces at Westminster need to hold on to Scotland for all the reasons that Phil set out. And why the people of Scotland accept this apparently just absolutely defies belief. When I was looking into this, Roddy, not being technically minded and having no level of expertise that, say, Phil has, I got slightly sidetracked and was looking at what they refer to as the wind curtailment and the need for the Scottish wind farms now and again, in effect, to turn themselves off. And if you read the information that's available, there is a line, and this may be partly accurate, there is a line to the effect that if Scotland continued and didn't switch off the turbines from time to time, the system would become overloaded and there would be risks of blackouts and breakdowns of equipment. Now, there might be some truth in that, but when you get to the bottom of all of these articles, there's always a phrase that says you've got to make sure that supply and demand match each other. Well, in essence, that's controlling the market and it's keeping prices higher than they need to be. So if Scotland ran her own affairs, not only could we invest properly in the infrastructure that might be needed to bring the grid up to scratch so that switching off didn't have to be done, but we would also be able to control supply and demand from the consumer's perspective so that our energy prices could drop, because we have a bounteous ability to produce that. And the impact of that would be nationwide overnight, because it would immediately impact citizens and domestic use, domestic costs. It would begin to target poverty, because we know that fuel costs and housing costs are amongst, if not the greatest drivers of poverty in Scotland.
Yep.
But in terms of our economy, we would become, again overnight, increasingly more attractive for investment and for the companies that need to be based somewhere like this. They'd have access not just to an educated, keen workforce, because that's what the Scots in the main are, but they'd have access to cheap energy that's produced locally, and that would help to kickstart the economy of an independent country. So there's a whole host of other reasons why, obviously, we need to be independent, but energy goes right to the heart of it, partly because it's a resource, so it's a revenue supply, but also because it's the resource that you can tap into to build the country that we know that Scotland can be, and that's not going to happen for as long as we're a devolved entity managed by remote control from Westminster.
No, absolutely right. But, Terry, how can even the hardcore unionists reading that the country's been penalised by $1 billion, they've got electric bills, they've got to go and buy food or add goods that are expensive because of the cost of electricity. Surely, how can anyone keep supporting that unequal union?
It's the colony thing, though, isn't it? This is the way they've always operated with their colonies. Tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I don't believe that all these wind farms actually belong to Scotland. I believe they belong to various different companies. So it's the companies that make the money, not Scotland. But just like the way they did in India, they take from the people and they give back little gifts. The wind farms today, our local wind farm, announced all the good causes that it's giving money to. Isn't that wonderful? They do it every year. They give money away because they make so much bloody money that they can afford to give it away. That's the problem. We are a colony and we're being treated every single day of our lives as a colony. And we need to fight against it instead of this meekly sitting back. Oh, yes, that's lovely. Thank you very much for that lovely little gift you've just given us so we can carry on doing the gardens, for example, that we can't afford to get people in to do. We have to have volunteers to do it. It's just diabolical. I cannot bear this any longer, to be quite honest. I don't understand any of this. It's all too technical for me. What I understand is they make a lot of money, Scotland doesn't get it, and we get little gifts. Hooray, isn't that nice?
Oh, so kind. They're so generous to us.
So
I mean, they did the same in India. They said, oh, but we gave the Indians railways. No, you put in the railways so you could get the resources out and stolen quicker and more efficiently and at less cost. You didn't do it because, oh, let's look after the Indian population and give them a nice rail service. Bull. And that's the problem, isn't it, Mark? Terry's touched on it perfectly. Give them some beads and mirrors and they won't see you're stealing everything they've got.
I must admit, I get infuriated when I listen to that whole thing about the railways that were added, that were put into India as if it was some benevolent project. It wasn't there to give the villagers in the Punjab a day out at the seaside. It was there to, as you say, asset strip the country. And what we're going to see now is we're going to see these huge pylons, scarring the Scottish landscape, and that's going to be a permanent reminder of the continual, theft of Scotland's not, it's renewable energy. It really does add insult to injury.
Yeah, and there's only one solution, folks, and it's easy: independence, nothing else. Independence, nothing less. But there was lots of talking of green things, Phil, this week. And I've got to commend them. Actually, I like to give praise where praise is deserved. I don't normally have much to say for them, but there's been all this outcry about, we need to, the unions, we need to see the SNP accounts because of what happened with Murrell. We need to know, inquiry. So the Greens came out and said, okay, here's an idea. Why don't we get all the party finances checked by an independent inquiry? Suddenly, Labour parties voted against the motion. What a surprise. It just shows the hypocrisy, and they've got plenty to hide as well.
That's a fact. There's we know what goes on in politics, and there are too many people in politics for their own benefit. And what they do is with their snouts in the trough, they're there to get as much as they can out for it for themselves. You may go in. You get a lot of people going into politics principled, but this is the trick, and this is what we need to remember. Even if there were an investigation, okay, or an independent, so-called independent inquiry into all parties in Scotland's finances, it would be there for show. Because as we know, once a politician is captured in so much as they are bought, blackmailed, or otherwise coerced, then the smart authorities, and the British state has ever been thus, keep them on the hook and play these little fishes to control them and basically get them to do as the establishment requires. And in the case of the Scottish SNP, or the SNP, there are people in the SNP who, Nicola was hiding things. A few have come out in the light. Murrell was hiding things. A few have come out in the light. They're trying desperately to avoid an investigation into the stitch-up, the framing, and the lies that were told about Alex Salmond and how he was persecuted and prosecuted. And the British state were after him forever because they couldn't buy him out. But they managed to finally get their claws into him from within because Nicola betrayed him. So that to me, Nicola, the pen, the redaction pen wielded by John Swinney, the paintbrush, I called it, actually, because it's more of a paintbrush than a pen. And everybody that was involved in stitching up Alex Salmond are all, once you're on that hook, you will do as you are told. And it even happens in local politics. Someone gets, you get them a little, somebody who's very keen to please, you get them to do something a bit dodgy, and as soon as they've done it, you've got them on the hook, and they're in your pocket for the rest of their careers. And that's very, very common. It's just how business works in politics. It's the dark arts, it's called in politics. Not everybody likes it, but it's very, very real. And the expression, the French come up with the expression perfidious Albion for a very good reason, because Britain's been doing it for a very, very long time and is pretty damn good at it. So for me, it would be a show. It won't be real. And if you're an establishment, as long as you're working with and for the establishment, you will be protected to a degree. Now, it suits the establishment to basically stain the independence movement and the SNP. Most people believe still represent the main route to independence. Like as we found in that local the Scottish election, I had people that I know. They know my interest in politics. They're not so interested in politics, but they believe in independence, so they voted SNP 1 and 2 because they believe that's what SNP told them. The SNP know that, the British government know that, and therefore an independent inquiry can only be done if it's done by the people and is truly independent, and that will never happen. It will be done by the state, it will be done by the organisations of the state, and the Scottish government is just an arm of the British state. It's a big council, and you cannot trust it, them, or the Brits. And that's, so for me, what's the point? We need a revolution. We need to get rid of these shysters and thieves.
Now, this is the thing, Eve, as I say, they all were showing full outrage at the SNP, as if they cared for the SNP supporters who had donated to that fund of the ring fence money. But as soon as the lights, well, okay, let's have I've got to commend the Greens, and I don't do that very often. If John Swinney had a political nous at all in his head, he would have said, okay, we'll have an inquiry, but you're all involved in it. And he'd have cut the legs away from them. So as soon as it gets to them, it's NIMBY time, isn't it?
Well, I said last week, I think it was, that it's death by 400,000 or 600,000 or 1 million cuts. And that's what this is. There has to be an inquiry into what happened within the SNP, because everybody knows that's part of a much wider picture that includes issues that relate to Alex Salmond. It includes issues surrounding the performance of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, as evidenced especially in Mark Hurst's case, where you've got a finding that there has been a malicious prosecution. So many questions need to be answered that stretch far beyond only the question of funding. But what I was interested to see was that Ross Greer attempted to quote Professor James Mitchell on the point of an inquiry, and immediately after Ross Greer's speech, Professor Mitchell was interviewed and I think volunteered that he'd been misquoted. I don't think that there was any suggestion that that Ross Greer had deliberately misled anybody, but he'd not said, or he'd not attributed to Professor Mitchell the remarks that he'd actually made. So what Professor Mitchell actually said was, lessons must be learned and many questions are not going away. The fundamental question, with many others following on from it, is how could theft on this scale have been possible, given that the perpetrator was hardly a master criminal? And he says about John Swinney and the SNP, they panicked in responding despite having had ample time to carefully consider what is needed. They tried to shut it down. It would be far better to confront the issues and deal with them than pretend it all comes down to one bad apple. This really ought not to be a controversial position. So I think he's saying very clearly there is, he says in terms, and he's a respected commentator and observer, the case for serious consideration of how parties are funded merits attention, but that's a separate matter from the Murrell row, and he's right, because there are serious questions regarding financial issues surrounding the major political parties.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this. But if those inquiries are conducted by a parliamentary committee, whether that's at Holyrood or at Westminster, you can bet your bottom dollar or your bottom spondulic that they will be partisan. They're bound to be. They're bound to be manipulated. They're bound to be spun. They'll be managed and controlled, probably to create as much muck and sling as much mud as possible without ever really revealing anything that cannot already be delused from the evidence currently available. So any inquiry has to be done independently and not, as Phil said, not by an arm of the state, because the public don't have confidence in the arms of the state anymore. So I said before, I thought that any inquiry should be conducted by a KC or the likes, preferably from out with Scotland, but I've changed my mind on that. I think that there will be people of integrity who are known to be people of integrity, such as some retired judges, some retired sheriffs, who would be in a position to pull together a team of people who don't represent political parties, but who understand how politics works, and most importantly, would have public confidence in investigating and bringing witnesses before them and requiring them to give evidence under oath. And that should include some of the biggest names within the SNP currently or previously, because the public will not let this go. The media will not let it go because they smell blood, and it needs to be fixed for the sake of the independence movement. So I think the best thing that John Swinney can do is lift the phone to some of the retired sheriffs that he knows perfectly well are people of integrity, get that ball rolling, and explain to the public that investigation is underway on the one hand, but let's not be sidetracked from the main purpose of the SNP, which is independence. So we're setting up, and at the same time, we're setting up the Independence Convention that we spoke about, and we're also looking at plans to advance the independence cause, particularly in respect of unity of those people who have independence as their fundamental and overriding priority.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, can you hear me all right? I heard someone shouting there, or is it just my end maybe here? Terry, this we want to investigate only one party, none of the rest. It's absolute hypocrisy.
I know everybody thinks I've got it in for John Swinney, but I've come up with a song for him, right? And it's, oh yes, I'm the great redactor, because that's what he's good at. Okay, that's it. However, thinking that John Swinney is going to somehow manage to pull this off, he couldn't pull it off at all. They had to get Ross Greer to stand in to do the wee extra bit. I don't believe that Ross Greer played a blinder. Ross Greer was trying to divert the attention away from the SNP and the Greens by saying this. And what has Anas Sarwar got hidden that he doesn't want exposed? None of them want any of it exposed. So where do we find these people of integrity? Because in my book, I've met people that are supposed to have integrity, and the minute they have a wee bit of power or a wee bit of cash comes their way, the integrity seems to fly out the bloody window. Where is this independent investigation going to come from? That's the question I want to know, because I don't think that anyone is non-partisan. I think everybody is. And that's just the cynical side of me. I'm sorry, but I can't help it. Yep. I'd love to believe it's good.
Everyone's partisan except us. We're not partisan, not here.
Are we not? All right, okay.
No,
sorry.
We're not partisan. No.
I thought we were.
Yeah, but the thing is, I've advocated it, and I got absolutely slaughtered for it. Mark, was that this would be a lot easier if it went to state funding for elections, and they brought down the limits of what could be spent, and they get back to old form of politics where the parties actually had to go and work for their, and then we wouldn't have all these problems about where's the money coming from, who's getting more money, what about this, forcing people to do things.
I think that's a good idea. I think that would go some way to sort of clearing up the mess that we've got in politics. The other thing I would like to see, though, is the removal of lobbying groups out with the United Kingdom that are effectively buying UK politicians. If we look at the various lobby groups that are, if you take Yvette Cooper, if you look at the amount of money that she's received from one particular country's, lobbying faction, you really would have to question in whose interests is that person working. And I'm picking her, but there are MSPs and there are MPs across all the parties that are funded by bodies out with the United Kingdom. I mean, if you want to clear up politics, first thing I would do is make it illegal. It's almost treasonous, if you think about it, to take money from a foreign entity, to affect policy. Where's the UK's foreign policy being driven from? Is it in the interests of this country? I would argue that it's not. So I think there's a lot of things that we could do at a UK level to clean up politics. But I mean, the thing I would want to see happen first is the depoliticisation of the position of the Lord Advocate in Scotland. Because if you've got the person who sits as the chief of the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, the body that decides who gets taken through for prosecution, who doesn't get taken through for prosecution. Yeah. I mean, that is just incompatible with a functioning democracy. And so and there are no consequences. We've already seen John Swinney has been found guilty of contempt of court through the various freedom of information requests that have been put in. There's no consequences. And, I think if you look at the establishment, as long as you've always got that Lord Advocate position bunkered that can decide who gets prosecuted and who doesn't, we're not a functioning democracy. So lots I could speak about this for hours, Roddy, but I could bore for hours on this subject.
Yeah, we shouldn't mention countries that try to influence like Israel and the Labour Friends of Israel and the Conservative Friends of Israel and now the Reform Party, which is a belter, which I'm coming on to shortly, Friends of Israel, and the Labour Friends of Israel. And you've just got to look across the pond to see what foreign influence can do. It literally starts wars and kills people and kills wee schoolgirls who just went to school and didn't come home. Appalling. But there's all sorts of things going on. And, we talk about being a democracy and how the union's unequal. We know the passion that we have in Scotland for football, Phil. This is World Cup week. And when it was announced, two things I noticed. There was the SNP Scottish Government applied for an extra bank holiday. And the way that works in the system, the King of England, not the King of Scots, ladies and gentlemen, the King of England, approved this bank holiday. And of course, the unions immediately saying, Prince Charles and his decency has granted it for the jocks. But I tell you, not everybody's pleased that the colonials, those horrible little sweaty socks, are getting something that they don't.
The bank holiday in Scotland for their first World Cup opening game, King Charles has approved a new one-off bank holiday to allow fans to watch the late-night World Cup clash. So they get next Monday off. It's pretty outrageous. I mean, how long does it take Scots to get over the fact that they've played their first match?
It sets a terrible precedent. So anytime anything happens, there is a call for a bank holiday.
Yes.
A bank holiday for this, a bank holiday for that. And normally the answer is no, because there's 8 bank holidays and it costs a lot of money to have a bank holiday.
Costs billions of pounds for a UK bank holiday. This would cost hundreds of millions of pounds to the Scottish economy.
I see the case. But they can afford it, obviously. You could understand it more if it was their first game they've been in for ages. But it's the night before.
How hungover do they get?
It's the morning before, Gillian, not the night before.
They've got a whole day to get over their hangover.
I've watched England games in the early hours before. I've never had a bank holiday. And if you go to work, don't get sloshed. You can still enjoy the football without being out of your head on alcohol. And you have to just go to work.
Is that the sort of unspoken acknowledgement that it is about alcohol?
So, yeah, I think it's going to be shown in thousands of pubs in Scotland now at 2 a.m. You can imagine the state of people.
No casual racism there, Phil. Absolutely no racism whatsoever. No stereotyping. No disgusting talk to people who are meant to be your equals in a union.
No, it's raw colonialism. It's drunken stereotypes. It's just it's give them bread in games. The circus. This is Caesar talking. What we're getting here is the usual and to have a king who's not my king, guys, they're a waste of space. We should be rid of the royal family. I've got no time for them. I don't want to continue to be paying any part of the several hundred million the cream offers from just the Crown Estate alone, it sickens me, and it's more of the same. It's the patronising nature of this. It's like cutting penny off a pint of beer and a
Bingo.
reduction of
Remember the
5 pence.
bingo? Off the bingo,
Yeah,
remember that?
and 5 pence off whippet food and pigeon feed. It's it's that kind of colonial crap and stereotypical nonsense. And we'll doff the cap, sir. Thank you very much, my lord. Yes, sir. No, sir. Off, sir. You know, it's way past that. It's beyond the pale. It makes you sick, and I can't be arsed with it. And I think more people should see that. It should make us angry, but not angry in a, oh, stop that, please. Angry in a, let's bugger off now way. That's what we should be doing.
When that came up on my screen, but I couldn't see the way it was hiding. I could see Terry's. I could watching Terry's. I'm really looking forward to asking Terry. Her face was a picture. But did you not find yourself getting just a wee bit annoyed with that?
No, I loved every minute of it for the following reasons. We can archive that and turn it into a party political broadcast, and we can ram that home constantly between now and the referendum, if we get one, or the next election, which will be a de facto referendum or plebiscite, because that attitude is indicative of colonialism and the most awful side of British commentators pretending to have a concern about the impact on the Scottish economy if the Scots get a day off. Seriously? Bleeding Scotland dry on a daily basis for centuries. You know, our oil, our wind, our wave power, our gas, our whiskey, our seafood, our forestry, our income from tourism. And you're telling me that they're bothered that the Scots get a day off, that they're no getting? No, all they're bothered about is keeping Scotland tied to the Union so that whatever money is made in Scotland creates the resource from which the rest of the UK manages to lurch forward through the 21st century like it has done since the 18th century. So these attitudes are entirely fitting and entirely appropriate for everybody in Scotland to see and to understand the disdain that they hold for us. And it takes you back to, for example, 2014. Lead us, don't leave us. Hands across the border. Telephone a friend in Scotland, and the Queen purred. These people need to be reminded of these attitudes on a daily basis, because these attitudes permeate the Westminster establishment, and that's that attitude that the movers and the shakers in the UK have towards the Scots in the main. You know, there are good people within the Westminster Parliament, and Angus Brendan touched on this a few weeks ago. There are good people there who respect democracy and who would say, as individuals, if the people of Scotland want the opportunity to vote for their independence, they should have it. But the problem is that the leaders of those parties and the backroom boys and the men in grey coats, the men in grey suits, don't agree with that. And it's those folk who hold the levers of power, and they have exactly the same mindset towards the people of Scotland as you saw there. On the one hand, we're a nation of drunks, and we need a day off to recover from an enormous hangover, on the one hand, but on the other, we're damn good grafters, and you better keep us grafting with a nose to the mill, because the Westminster Exchequer requires it to be so. Well past time that decisions about the Scottish economy and decisions about having a day off or not were made in, for and by the people of Scotland. And watch the likes of Susanna and those round about her start worrying about their bank balances when they see that their taxes are increasing because Westminster is no longer subsidised by North Britain.
Well, it's the fact, Terry, that group of white, middle-class, privileged, who are living in that wee London media bubble, they're disgust at this. You could tell how much they loathe the Scots, and they'll be the exact same with the Welsh and the Irish too.
1966. It's all over. Yeah. Well, it is now. Do you know how many times I've heard that? Sorry. Just about to swear again. Right. Do you know how many times I've heard that in my life? It's 60 years of it. 60 bloody years of hearing how wonderful they were when they won the World Cup and how absolute crap we are because we've never won it. Oh, we invented the game. That's enough for me. That's not the bloody point. The bit that really got me there, the bit that really ripped my knitting, was talking about us as being absolute pissheads. Absolute, every one of us is a pisshead. Now, the first thing I want to point out is if you live in Scotland, you have to pay more for your drink. If you want to buy drink cheaply, you go to England to buy your drink cheaply. I'm very fortunate. If I was an alcoholic, I'm only 6 miles away from Berwick. I can shoot over. In fact, that's where the big shops are. So I could go and get as much. In fact, if anyone that wants a wee carry out, just give me a shout and I'll go get it. It's nonsense to suggest that we're all stoned or we're either stoned or drunk. That's it. That's the Scottish picture. That guy, you can watch a football game without being pissed. Sorry, I'd have to be medicated to watch a football game. I have no idea what's going on. I'm going to watch this World Cup thing whenever it is, and I'm going to be like that. Wonder what's happening. Who's winning? And then having to ask somebody at the end who won. It's not that I won't be pissed though. That's the important thing. I don't understand why we enjoy ourselves. We have fun and we're very loud and we're very raucous. That doesn't mean to say we're all absolutely plastered. Some of us are, some of us aren't.
Can I just say there, as an independence supporter, and we know the way they double standard everything and how they twist things, Terry, it probably isn't wise as an independentista to use the word shoot over the border, because they might take it the wrong way and you could end up in handcuffs by next Tuesday.
I have to point out that I'm actually a great shot. I could have been a sniper.
Oh, we're right in trouble now. So I'm looking for a volunteer for next week because our Terry is not going to be with us probably for 2 or 3 years. But Mark, on this, the absolute, it's disgusting the way they talk about it. As I say, they're like middle class, so home counties. It's so blatant.
It is, but we can use that to our advantage because what you're seeing there is the commentariat, in the home counties effectively have got a 1970s stereotype view of what they perceive Scotland to be. We're a different country. Our the attitudes. If you look at how the Tartan Army celebrate, how well received they are abroad. I'm quite happy for them to think of us as unruly drunks, as insulting as that is, because it just shows that when the inevitable happens, they'll not be prepared for it.
No, and hell mend them.
Yeah.
And then the big lecky meter goes on, folks. Big lecky meter and a big petrol pump meter as well.
One thing I think it does show is that I think Scotland, most people in Scotland, I think, see Scotland as a small country that has great potential. I think what you were seeing there with those commentators is old entrenched views. It is that colonial view, that they know better, that somehow England, I have to say, has not reconciled itself with its actual position in the world. And that's why I think they hang on to these negative stereotypes of the countries that they still think that they control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They don't get smiles when they say they're from England. When you say you're from Scotland, you get smiles. And that's just a fact. But here's the other news that comes through this week, Phil. The latest polling shows that it's at 63% for independence. The Scots want a plan B. Wasn't that great? I wish someone had said that. I mean, I'm sure the SNP's got a plan B. What do you think, Phil? Big plan B ready for the 63%?
We're just going over this again and again and again, and we're like broken records, and it's irritating. It's so irritating. 63% with no campaign, and it's absolutely staggering. Alex, we well know, took us from 28% to 52% for independence just before a fixed set up English referendum, set on England's terms, for the people of Scotland to vote for their independence. And I believe, and certainly we're cheated out of it, and that will come out in the wash eventually. But right now, SNP sitting doing nothing. No, they didn't have a plan A. the plan A is a joke. We knew, everybody knew it wouldn't work. Even Herr Nicola said it wouldn't work. So why did they go ahead with it? Why do they still go with SNP 1 and 2? And anyone who says SNP 1 and 2 in the SNP leadership cannot be trusted, because they too are playing into the hands of the British state, who were keeping them on their knees. So anybody they're talking about, someone replacing John Swinney, John Swinney should be ejected from politics. So should Nicola, so should Angus Robertson, so should all of the SNP leadership. Bust them down to private and let them go back into the trenches and prove they're worthy of our trust, because they've betrayed us. So for me, I mean, I'm not saying never, but I don't think in my lifetime I'll trust them, because until they earn it, they cannot be trusted. They have lied to us. They have failed to take advantage of the fact that we want independence. It's been over at 50% for years of us wanting independence, and it's just it's just more of the same. It's more and more of the same. We need a revolution. We need to clean out those stables, and we need to get rid of these so-called leaders who are keeping us, they're devolutionists, with their snouts in the trough, looking after number one, and they should be ashamed. And make their life a misery. When you see them, tell them what you think of them. Tell them there's no time for you. Tell your local representative of their SNP, you're a traitor. You failed to get us out of this mess, and people are dying because of you. You traitorous. Beep, whatever you want. Add in your own. Fill in the blanks.
You've got this show, it's sitting at 63%. Our first item today was talking about, you jocks can pay an extra $1 billion a year to get your electricity you generate for us down here. You're going to pay for that. Put it on here. We've had this, the television people telling us, pundits, how terrible we are, and all these things. And yet, we just can't seem to get the people to understand that they're viewed as nothing.
It's actually worse than that, Roddy, because you'll remember that during the election campaign, John Swinney said that if there was an independence majority, preferably a majority of SNP MSPs, he would immediately ask for that referendum consent to Section 30. Well, it's now, 5 weeks since the election, and he's still not asked. He's not asked the question. Why not? So I think the latest press release was to the effect that he'd be having talks with Keir Starmer, and it said next month. But that was a press release that was issued in May. So he plans to have talks with the Prime Minister sometime this month in June, right? So we're basically halfway through the month, and we don't know when those talks are going to occur. Why didn't he just send him a letter? That's what you should have done. I'm getting feedback, Roddy. Is somebody not on mute? So I can hear my own voice.
No, I'm not hearing it.
So, in the period of time since the election, there's been around about 1,100 people in Scotland died every week. A proportion of those people died prematurely, and they died as the result of poverty. And some of them died as the result of addiction. And we know that these are horrendous problems. And we also know that we're not going to be able to sort these the way that they should be sorted unless we've got full economic powers and we're able to behave like the sovereign nation that we understand we ought to be. So what John Swinney should have done is he should have, if he was intent on Plan A, he should have issued his request by now. He would have been knocked back, and then he could reveal what steps to take next. But he can't trigger that process because he doesn't have a plan for what happens when consent is refused. He also ought to do the easiest thing in the world, which is speak to Angus Brendan McNeill. Just even read Angus's tweets, where it's set out very plainly how he can collapse the Parliament and proceed to hold a vote, which is in essence a plebiscite. And as Phil said, here we are again. We say this every week. We've been saying this for years. Other people have been saying it probably for longer than any of us here have. You're going back, in essence, to 2014, and when the result was a no, to saying, well, where do we go from here? And we knew then where to go from there. And here we are, 12 years later, the SNP embroiled in extremely difficult circumstances where they are not going to achieve the outcome that they want by themselves. We need unity of the movement. You get unity of the movement in recreating the spirit of Yes 2014 and by bringing on board everybody who genuinely desires independence. And there will be members and supporters of the SNP who will be four square behind the Angus Brendan McNeill plan, if we call it that, and would go for it. They would, almost, I don't know, they would find it incredulous that John Swinney would refuse to go down that route. If support is sitting at 63% or 53%, all that we need is the date for the election, the plebiscite, the referendum, call it what you will, and people will come out to vote because they will have hope again. In the absence of any other plans, we're going round in circles, and we will for as long as the SNP maintain their currently very flawed position on the only way to independence being via a referendum.
Yeah, I don't know how this month John's going to see Starmer, because the World Cup being in full swing, and we'll come on to a couple of things about that in a minute. They're both, Starmer and John Swinney, will be in New York, different parts of America or Canada, watching the respective teams. So I don't think any meeting will take place. But Terry, on that, all those things, we've given reasons, that, as I alluded to Eva, that, and I couldn't remember actually why I'd done all that with Eva and had to change the question, but I've just remembered all those things we've been discussing and reasons to leave. And here was another one. One of the big things in the independence movement is their disgust of weapons of mass destruction in the Clyde. And this week, the government, the English government, called the UK government, overtakes Russia as the Labour's hike nuclear weapons spend by 17%. Now, I'm sure I can think of better ways to spend 17% of the GDP, and you could as well, or wherever the fund's coming from. But it's just, if we ever needed another reason, that's another one. Who wants these nukes?
Well, we don't. We don't want the ones we've got, for God's sake. Why do we have them? Why does anyone have nuclear bombs? Why is there this fixation about getting as much nuclear stuff as you can to kill people? The last one was in Nagasaki in 1945. We learned, the world learned at that point about the destruction that can be caused by these bloody things. And yet we have a whole stack of them up at Faslane. Why do we have them? Oh, because they're the Yanks. They belong to the Americans, don't they? They don't belong to us. And also, do we get paid for keeping them? Why do we have them? Why are they in Scotland? Because Scotland isn't England. That's why we've got them. I am so tired of this. I was a member of the CN. Right. I campaigned for nuclear disarmament for many years. I still go up to Faslane to shout and bawl and get arrested sometimes, but that's beside the point. But why have they increased it? Because Starmer is a man who wants a war. That's what he wants. He wants us to actually be involved in the war. And I think when he talked about having a chat with Swinney, I think the chat will be about conscription, about getting our young people involved in the army, getting them off the streets and into the army. That'll be a solution for all the young people who've not got jobs. It's all designed to cause as much harm as it can. I really don't get nuclear stuff. I don't get it. Why do we have them? What for? What is the deterrent? Oh, we will nuke you if you're not good. Well, we don't. Why would we? It would kill the earth even more than we're killing it now. We're just destroying people all the time, and I don't understand what that's about. I'm a peacenik. I want peace. I don't want war. I don't want Starmer. I don't want Swinney to be involved with Starmer. I don't want any of it. Stop it right now. It's pointless. And go and play outside with stones. Sick of this.
Well, I'm like yourself. I'm a peacenik and I'm anti-weapons of mass destruction, and certainly on the Clyde. But when you say, what's the point of them? I think if Iran had them, they wouldn't have been attacked. It's to deter the Americans and the bloody Israelis. That's why people in countries need nuclear weapons. It's not the other way about. And that'll no doubt get me some lovely hate mail. But there you go. I've got lots of time in my hands soon. But on this, Mark, we've got 63% people want a referendum, or they want a plan B. They want to get independence. And we know that there's so many pro-independence supporters staying at home. Can you imagine what it would be like if they actually put a campaign in place, a constitutional convention, come up with a plan, and we were off and running?
I think it would be incredible. I think we would be looking at the same sort of numbers that we got that voted for the Scottish Parliament back in 1997. What was that, 3-1? I think from memory.
70-odd%.
But you know, there's no. I find it frustrating. I can't help but thinking that the SNP have basically morphed into the Labour Party that they replaced in 2007. There just doesn't seem to be the appetite. There's no work getting done in the background. There's no case being made. You know, you could lay out, you know, our relationship with Europe, how quickly that would happen through EFTA. We could look at, you know, harnessing the green energy with the stampede of manufacturing businesses to do that. There's none of that. The case just simply isn't being made. It's been made by activists. It's been made by programs like yourself. Why are the SNP not pushing this? You know, are they too comfortable? Have they just, you know, have they all adopted the Pete Wishart comfy slippers approach to politics? Are they bought and sold, as Phil had kind of mentioned earlier? I really don't understand why there's this inertia within the SNP, given the polls have been creeping up with zero campaigning. Just think what a campaign would do.
Yeah, well, it's the answer to your question is I think a lot of our politicians nowadays, it's like a career. It's show business to them. It's about the TikToks they can do. They don't have a political core in their body. It's terrible. But 63%, Phil. Nukes, they're going to increase the spending. But here, if you know, this sums up to me the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They've put in a £330,000 for the new Israel-Palestine Peace Fund. Isn't that wonderful? They've sent 21.8 million to Kiev for war. They refuse to disclose how much money they've given to Israel and in goods and services for the genocide, but they can put 330,000 in a peace pot and feel good about themselves.
Well, this is the government announcing 330,000 for a new Israel-Palestine peace fund.
Yeah,
so it's for show, because nothing will help the Palestinians out of this. And it's a creation of an international peace fund for Israelis and Palestinians, and said it will give 330,000 of funding this year. And it's announced the UK, Australia, Canada to cover up for their involvement and their support for Israel. And this is a cover up so they can say, no, we're peaceniks too. No, you're not. You're warmongers, and you're part of the problem, not the solution. I mean, they say they'll put $1 million in each over 3 years. It's a drop in the ocean, because you consider what Israel gets. The United States gives Israel a baseline of $3.8 billion every year under a 10-year agreement, split between $3.3 billion on military grants and $500 million for missile defence. That baseline, however, has been dwarfed in recent years by emergency spending. During the Gaza war that began in 2023, Congress approved roughly $12.5 billion in supplemental additional military and defence aid on top of that annual commitment, and the current administration authorised nearly $12 billion more in major arms sales in early 2025 alone. So in total, the United States provided Israel approximately $174 billion in nominal dollars since 1946, or about $298 billion when adjusted for inflation, making Israel the largest cumulative recipient of American foreign assistance. So this is just for show. The nukes is what you mentioned about the nukes is absolutely critical, though, Roddy. 17%. What does that mean? Well, first of all, nuclear weapons. Nuclear war, we're getting closer because of what we've just talked about, because of war in the Middle East, because of war in Ukraine, and it's pushed by Israel and America at the moment, and the European Union. We're as guilty, sadly. All of us, UK, European Union, America and Israel, but driven by Israel and their genocidal campaign around the Middle East. But we have a massive target on our back. The whole of the Central Belt would be wiped out, and Scotland would be a nuclear wasteland if that happened. So having and managing nuclear weapons costs an absolute fortune. It's approximately 6.5 billion per year. 6.5 billion. We've been talking about 1 in 4 almost children in poverty in Scotland. and they're complaining, oh, you're going to lose a couple of $100 million because of your holiday for you drunk jocos, and we're spending $6.5 billion a year on nuclear weapons, and it's 6.5 annually since for the 2022-23 figures, which is the 17% increase, and it's expected to rise with a total budget for nuclear-related spending projected, and this is just war, to reach 109 billion over the next decade, and it's skyrocketing. And the CND reported, they said that this was the National Audit Office, who I worked with on the budget when I was working for the Public Accounts Committee, and onto that very briefly in a second. It reported the defence, so its costs increased by 38.2 billion, 62% to 99.5 billion in 2023. Right? It's hundreds of billions this is costing us. So you go into that, go check on the CND website, you'll get all the details on this, but that's just weapons. Remember, we don't need nuclear energy, tying it we talked about before with wind. We don't need nuclear energy in Scotland. It's based here entirely for the benefit of England and the energy users and the British state and the companies that profit massively out of it. And look at the cost overruns for Hinkley C. Bear me these minds, relate and connect these numbers. And watch where the wool gets pulled over your eyes, folks. Hinkley Point C nuclear power station is now projected to cost around 48 to 50 billion, nearly 3 times its original estimate. I mean, when first approved, Hinkley C was supposed to be 18 billion at 2015 prices, and I was at Westminster at that time, and expected to start in operations around 2025. No chance. And I talked about the Public Accounts Committee. For Sellafield alone, when I was an MP and rapporteur on the Public Accounts Committee, I, along with the other members of that committee, carried out the annual audit back in 2016 for the management of nuclear waste at Sellafield, which alone was 1 billion. Now it's 2.5 billion. So the UK spends approximately 2.5 billion each year on managing the nuclear waste at Sellafield. This funding is allocated to the Nuclear Decommission Authority, the NDA, which oversees the decommissioning, and that's who we audited. And here's the other joke about this: not one of us had any clue about nuclear weapons or energy, and on that audit committee. And myself apart, none were accountants, commercial or contracts managers, used to audit, are familiar with audit. So again, it was mostly for show. We've been conned. Avoid the smoke and mirrors. Get the claymores out the thatching, I'm afraid. Well, not with the violence, but figuratively speaking, we should be independent. That, nothing else will freeze from this robbery, theft and murder of people.
All that money you're talking about that's getting borrowed to pay for Hinkley and HS2 and all those things. Remember, folks, we pay 8.9% of all that debt and all that borrowing. And then they say, oh, you're too poor to be independent. Aye, because you've saddled with your debt. It's a joke, an absolute joke. The clock's kicking on, Eva, and there's so much I want to get through. And if you want to comment on those, it's great about the nuke and all this. But this is the other one that came out just Saturday morning. That it has been announced that there has been meddling actually in the Scottish election. They found an Israeli firm were meddling in the Holyrood vote. And of course, our media and the rest, with the exception here of the in-house magazine for the SNP, are silent on this because it is a certain state you can't criticise.
Exactly. If I rewind slightly to nuclear and defence, etc., you obviously had the spectacle of John Healey, the Defence Secretary, resigning. And there's something very odd at play here when you look at his resignation letter, where he's complaining that Starmer is putting the country, the United Kingdom's security at risk, and their defence investment plan falls well short of what was required. But look at the massive sums of money that are pledged for nuclear, billions and billions of pounds for that. And then look at what is described as the defence budget not increasing by as much as the ex-Defence Secretary wanted. Can I suggest that this says very strongly that there's money going missing somewhere? It's it's meant to go. And, you know, in a way, I'm not sad to see the Defence Secretary go. I wish that Starmer would go. But more than anything, I wish that we had devoted politicians in Scotland who put the people of Scotland first, because there's a target on our back when we've got these weapons of mass destruction on the Clyde. We all know that. And they're there for that simple reason that the people of Scotland are far more easily dispensed with than the people that live in and around Westminster. So again, I'll say ram them up your Thames. Whatever it was the Israelis did or did not do, they're not going to be criticised by at least the leadership of the SNP, because they consider that they're almost at times beyond criticism for the reasons that we already know. More interesting, though, would be how do we make sure, if we ever get an election on independence, that is not tampered with? Well, we do that by having reliable security, and we do it by running it in for and by the people of Scotland, because it's the only way that it will work and the outcome will be a reliable one. We've all got anecdotes about what happened in 2014, about the franchise and about whether votes were double counted, not counted at all, put into the wrong piles for separation purposes or whatever. So there's a lot of questions to be asked and answered about the democratic processes in Scotland, but those will remain academic whilst John Swinney sits on his hands and doesn't take the independence movement forwards. You know, he's got such a fantastic opportunity here with Scotland having the superb reception that Mark alluded to earlier in America. I mean, the scenes in Boston will become the stuff of legends. It will be back to talking about Wembley 1977 or Wembley 1967. Where were you? The Americans or the folk in Boston clearly love the Tartan Army, which is the reception that they get everywhere. But this is the very time to showcase the positive aspects of Scotland, not, you know, the kilt and the pipes. I mean, there was a fantastic tweet of piping being done in Boston, all different folk all over the place. This is what needs to be broadcast. The Scots as a friendly and curious, sociable nation. And I'm not disappointed that John Swinney's in the USA. I don't know what business meetings he's got lined up. I'm sure he'll have a few. But if Alex Salmond was still the First Minister, of course, we'd expect him to be in the USA, because, you know, it's a
stop him.
opportunity. Exactly. But it needs to be milked for every cent that it's worth, but not selling ourselves short and not selling our souls. But we should be talking about democracy for us and not forgetting that the priority is independence, so that we in Scotland can say that we live in the land of the free.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Starmer even went on further to say he would trim all budgets to fund defence. All budgets. They put that first. But you're right also about Boston. I mean, it brings me on nicely. And a nice segue into what's going on the World Cup. But I saw a great comment that you're right. The people in Boston at the moment or in New York are loving the Tartan Army being there. And as one American journalist wrote, in 9 months' time, there's going to be a lot of flame-haired children running about Boston without daddies, which I thought was a wee bit over the top. But they're having a ball, and I think they're going to enjoy it. And as we do have our Tartan Army, but the World Cup isn't actually going according to plan, is it, Terry? I mean, it's now become America's foreign policy that has taken precedence over the sport. Now, I know you're not a great football lover, but when you've got people like the top African referee being banned from the country, not allowed in because he's from Somalia, that is the policy. All the other World Cups, all sort of immigration things are suspended. But they've turned this into political. They've also had the Senegal team, getting strip searched on the tarmac. It's been quite appalling, this racism that's been shown in America.
Before I talk about that, I want to have a quick mention about dear old Swinney again. I can't help myself, right? On that article, he said that they had noticed there'd been a lot of anti-SNP tweets and social media messages. I have to hold my hand up and confess they were all me. It wasn't a bot, just me working constantly day and night to tell them what for. Anyway, the Somalian boy, I reckon, I remember reading somewhere that he was invited along to Canada. Is that right?
Yeah. He has been. He's also been given a big European Super Cup to do in August.
Yes, but the thing is, I really don't understand football, but I do understand that the World Cup is open to the people of the world to play in and to the people of the world to come to watch the games. Okay, you have to, whatever it is, go through the hunt process to get there, right? But when you get there, you're invited and people look forward to having you, and they particularly love having the Tartan Army. But why do they not love having dark people? That's racist. Now, if they were talking about they don't want the Scots just because they're Scots and they're drunkards, that would be racist as well. Racism is endemic in our world. And
the Western world, yeah.
Yes, absolutely, in the Western world. And we're educated to be like that. We are brainwashed to be like that as well. When you look at the way immigrants have been portrayed by Farage for all this time, you see the racism in spades there. And our media is constantly putting up stuff, like you hear about this person being arrested off a ferry for raping somebody, or this Indonesian born. What's it matter where you were born? Surely what matters is the crime that you've committed, the bad things that you do, not where you're born. That's racism on steroids.
Yep.
I think that it's time that we need to shake it up. America is, it should never have had the World Cup. It wasn't fit to have the World Cup.
Yeah, agreed. They can't even call it by its proper name. I know the other thing is that clip I showed earlier, Mark, was English racism against the Scots. I mean, without a doubt, that is the problem. Racism is a problem. I know you're a big football fan like myself, and I mean, you must be watching these things over there where referees getting banned, teams getting. I mean, even one of them was Cannavaro, a World Cup winner, because he was the manager of Uzbekistan, was searched and everything on the tarmac. It's appalling what's happened. It's been very bad for the game.
I mean, I must admit, when you see the actions that you've just spoken about in the run up to, I was never enthusiastic about this World Cup. Like Terry, I don't think America should have been given it. I don't think they should have been given it against the political climate, and a whole load of things that are out with sport, and a lot of that's manifesting itself in the way that, as you say, teams from countries that the US deem unfavourable are being treated, and it's appalling. So it's the least enthusiastic I've ever been about a World Cup, and I've been to a few of them. That said, when I see the Scottish fans in Boston, I'm starting to get a little bit more enthusiastic. I'm slowly getting drawn in. And of course, being a Scottish football fan, what does that mean? You start with low expectations to try and insulate yourself from the disappointment. Your optimism rises, and then at some point you'll get a kick in the teeth again, metaphorically speaking. So, but yeah, no, serious point. I think the politicization of the World Cup has been horrendous. And I think, I can never pronounce his name correctly, but the head of FIFA really should get his jotters at the end of this, because he's been craven in the way that he's kissed Donald Trump's arse. Can I say that on the show?
You've just said it.
But yeah, he's been absolutely craven, and just shows that as an organisation, he is, that FIFA under his stewardship are not fit for purpose, and there needs to be a serious rethink about how. The world's premier sporting event that brings countries together, we need to relook at how that is going forward.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The last word on that, Phil. Have you been shocked and stunned by the racism shown by the American foreign policy is ruling over FIFA? I've got a quid. That's a quid, mate. Thick quid.
I forgot to click the wee button. That's £1 another. Well, at least the show gets £1 out yet. But no, I'm not shocked and surprised because of what's been going on in ICE and America's citizens being subject to this racism and this fascism, which is sad. It's so sad to see for a country that we helped invent, of course. But I mean, the concerns are it's not just the fan incidents. The ticket prices, the venues, empty stadiums, political and economic, the immigration policy, the fact that if you want if you apply for an EFTA, they will check your social media to see if you disagree with the government. What's that got to do with football? And the prices have tripled since the last tripled. And why is there so many seats? Why can most of the population not afford it? I mean, Western teams are welcomed with open arms. The smaller teams, particularly from black or Muslim countries, are being searched on the tarmac or banned from the US. Seriously? In this day and age? Then it's surrounded by political tension and the ongoing war in Iran that America and Israel started, which has raised concern. And then what the proxy war that we started against Russia. It's absolute disgusting. These factors contribute to it's a complex atmosphere. But you know what the biggest thing that really angers me, what we talked about earlier, electoral corruption in the UK of the West is not news. Why? Because it's Israel that's doing it. Then don't mention it. This is a report on the French investigations found that Israeli firm Blackcore interfered in the Scottish election. Was the honest, open, public investigation into that? And this is an Israeli private influence firm is suspected of meddling in elections in Scotland and New York City as part of the wider global interference operation, according to France's state disinformation watchdog. This is Vignium, the French government service tasked with detecting foreign digital interference. And it said on Thursday that Blackcore, an Israeli-based company, had been linked to covert smear and manipulation campaigns reaching Scotland prior and up to the election. Why is there no investigation into that?
You know why. I know you're being rhetorical there. But we're coming to the end. Last one, I have to bring it up. We know there was a terrible assault and a grievous bodily harm done in Northern Ireland, Eva. This started, Farage talked about people should get enraged and we care. The MSP in the list was telling people, these strangers are in our midst. They incited it. And then it transpired, it's come out in the wash. Again, I'm handing out compliments to a lot of people I don't normally, to the National. This guy who is, you can see here, photographed with Mr. Kerr. He has said, Grant Calder's his name. He was in the rioters. He was one of the rioters in Glasgow on Tuesday. And he has claimed that Jews are trying to dilute our Protestant stock and shatter the union. He said it's Buchanan Street holding the White Lives Matter banner. This is the type of person that the Brits are putting up from reform. Isn't it time the people of, I said when they get in, they would get exposed. And this is the kind of exposure that's coming down the tube, isn't it, Eva?
Yeah, hell mend them. People were well warned. And again, we say it every week, to a large extent, what let reform in was the both votes SNP.
Absolutely.
Had it been vote Indy 1 and Indy 2, that would have been a different set of circumstances. But can I just say that attack was truly horrific, barbaric, terrifying, clearly life-threatening. The poor man's obviously very, very ill, very poorly, and he's lost one eye, and I understand that his other eye is in jeopardy and clearly has other serious injuries. But under no circumstances, none, did that justify the rioting and the behaviour that was evident in so many places, not just in Northern Ireland, obviously, but over here as well. Peaceful protesting is absolutely the order of the day, but the levels of violence that we're seeing were just completely unacceptable. And it feeds into that rhetoric that you start wondering about who set this up, who staged this, in whose interests is it that there's behaviour like this that's seen on the streets of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland? Because what it will do is it will encourage those politicians who want to take ever more extreme measures to clamp down on our right to freedom of expression or free speech or to gather and to protest. So people need to be very careful about who they criticise and who they vilify and about the conclusions that they draw when you see poor and violent and aggressive conduct. Who is it that's doing it and who benefits from it?
Yeah. And yeah, it's a good point, but you should remember Zionism and Judaism are two different things, completely different, very different. And if you know, I don't know if it's true now. Like Eva, I'm appalled at what happened. That kind of violence. That man, she's lost an eye. They almost tried to behead him and all this. But it kicked off, and the rumor there is a certain irony. This guy talked about the diluting of the Protestant stock. My God Almighty, as well. But I hear there is possibly a true rumor that the poor gentleman that was attacked in Belfast may have been from the Catholic community. And wouldn't it be just so ironic that him that's worried about the diluting of the Protestant faith was out burning houses and attacking people? They're strange people, these racist, fascist bastards. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, as I say, I hope you and yours are well. We'll see you very, very soon. And I hope, as I say, it was a good result last night. And I'm still smiling. I'm going to live in hope. I'm going to get ready now and go to a wee siesta. So I'm up for the game tonight. And may you and yours take care, and we're going to win it.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.